So again, geographic isolation. Now this is common. You see this among lots of different types of organisms on the planet. Temporal isolation is another very common form of prezygotic isolation mechanism. So this is isolation of reproductive events that occur at different times. So mating, flowering seasons, they don't overlap with each other. The parental and the daughter group don't overlap in terms of the times in which they mate. And there's many examples of this. There's lots of fish that actually school together. Morphologically look identical to each other, but they're distinctive species within the same school. Why? Because one mates in the spring and another one mates in the fall. But yet they're all bound together. So cicada are really nice examples of this. Anybody from back east? Do you ever hear the cicada when you're back east? Yeah, they're cool, right? They make this kind of really neat whirling noise. You guys ever seen those, like that party tool thing where you go round, 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 and you wind it like that? That's exactly what they sound like. They kind of sound like that. They're really cool organisms, and so they're these insects. This is the mature insect. They spend the vast majority of their lifespan, however, as a larval form, and it's underground, and they suck on the sap of the tree roots. But then they come to the surface to breed. And when they come to the surface to breed, they have a mating song, just like a bird does. And it's that whirling noise you hear. To us, it just kind of sounds like row, 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 but to them, it's very distinctive. And each species has a very particular call, a mating call that they make. So they stay underground for long periods of time, and then they emerge every 17 years to actually mate. Now, each species has an interesting sibling species that is quite identical, but reproduces on a 13-year cycle, not a 17-year-old cycle. If you actually do the math, they come out at exactly the same time, once every 221 years. That's when they emerge together and can mate with each other. What's interesting about them, however, is every time they come to the surface, there's less hybridization. Why is that? So every 212 years they come out, but there's less mating between the two groups every time they come out. There's been genetic divergences occur. What traits do you think have changed?
The sound.
It's the what?
The sound.
It's the sound. Exactly like, remember the meadowlark? Same exact thing here, but over time, not a geographic barrier. Morphologically, they can mate with each other. They do the same things physiologically, but it's the behavior that's different here. And they're singing a different song, and they're not recognizing the song anymore as a reproductive event to basically stimulate copulation. Cicada in some areas of the world are considered to be a delicacy. Yes, question?
How do we know that if it only occurs every 220?
That's a great idea. So we don't have that many times going back, but in terms of the isolation, the biologists have been able to look at it, have confirmed that there's actually less successful matings. But we only have like 3 cycles that goes back. It's about it. But I think it's definitely, there's enough evidence to support that. It's a great question. All right. So in some areas of the world, they're actually a delicacy. They're a seasonal food source when they come out every 17 to 13 years. And this is a cicada shish kebab. I've tried them. They were not good. Insects typically, it depends on where your cultural background, because in some places insects are much more common fare. And like anything, I'm sure you get used to eating them and consider them to be good. I've traveled a lot of the world, and I've also done a lot of work in kind of really outback areas where you're dealing with indigenous populations, and a lot of times they serve you food, and it's a sign of respect, right? It's hard to make a living when you're out in the middle of nowhere. It's not like you sit in the middle of the city and just go buy something from somebody, right? It's not like that. So you got to catch your own food, hunt your own food, and so as a sign of respect, they often offer you food, but it's like these local things. And a lot of times they're bugs, and you can't turn them down, because then what is it? It's a huge sign of disrespect, and it's an insult. And then all your biological work is out the window, because they're not going to help you with anything because you were rude. So I've been forced to put some pretty nasty stuff in my mouth and go, delicious, terrible stuff, right? And then most of the times, the things that I've eaten that have been really bad have been bugs. I've eaten a lot of other kinds of animals, and they're always pretty much okay. But when it comes like alligator and snakes and all kinds of things like that, they're all fine. But when it comes to bugs, they're all pretty much the same. Crunchy on the outside and bitter pussy on the inside. That's kind of what a bug's like, right? I don't care how you flavor it up, that's pretty much what it is, you know? Eat some pretty nasty ones. One was a big, nasty grub that comes out of a palm. the cane palm plant. And it's this big beetle larva thing. And that thing is just terrible. There's no way around it. And I remember putting that in my mouth and just biting into it. It was like, this is what it must be like to eat like a zit or something. Gross. I remember just chewing on it and just trying to keep it down. And I can't tell you how many times I had to eat something like that, and then when everybody wasn't looking, go throw it up someplace because it was just horrendous. Terrible. But some places love them. Cicada was just kind of bitter and crunchy, and really wasn't that disgusting, but it was okay. And it's a great source of protein if you eat it. Here's the thing: how many people are there on the planet today? Close to 8 billion now, 7+ billion, a lot. Guess what's going to happen? You want to keep adding people to the planet, guess what you're going to be eating? Bugs. Bugs, because that's the only thing that can grow fast enough and quick enough and have enough protein source to do it. You're not feeding the world on filet mignon. It ain't happening, all right? It's bugs. I'd rather have less people on the world, I think. Yeah. That's kind of mine. Here's an interesting one dealing with primates. And so primates are quite separated in terms of their temporal segregation and reproduction. And so, like, here's the female baboon. When you look at primates, they have estrus periods. The estrus period is basically a period of time where the female is reproductively ready and will accept mating. If you try to mate with her when it's not estrus, what happens to you if you're the male? You get the crap beat out of you, okay? Which happens. They will not accept mating. It's only during these times of year. 2 to 4 times a year, depending on the species. When the female is in estrus, she'll let you know because she displays morphological signs that she is. How do I know this female's in estrus? Because her genitalia are engorged in bright red. So red is a color of a couple different things. One is sexual attraction, and the other one is basically an aggressive interaction. It can go both ways. Here's an interesting thing for human beings. What's the primary #1 selling lipstick in the world?
Red.
Red. What do you think it's used for? It's a sexual attraction, okay? It's the same basic idea. Human beings, interestingly, are estrus all year long. They'll accept mating all year long. Very different. There's only one other species of primate that will do that. You know what it is? It's a relative to the chimpanzee. You know what it is? Not the orangutan. It's called the bonobo. You've ever heard that? Bonobo. And that will accept mating all year long too. They have a very interesting society that's based on sexual contact. So it's basically to say hello, sex, to say goodbye, sex, to reestablish pair bond, sex, midday greeting, sex. It's a very strange society. It works for them. Okay? So here's the thing. It's them, and then it's us, and then all the rest of the primates. Now, primates will not accept mating at certain times of the year. Why is that? Why is it not beneficial if you're a typical primate out in their environment to not accept mating whenever?
Food availability.
What's that? The offspring will not survive. Why?
They're like a mobile creature.
What is it?
They're really mobile and like it weighs them down. No?
It's seasonal that deals with what? Resources. That's exactly right. So depending on where you find the primates, they will only want to have offspring being born when the resources are high. And typically that deals with rainy and dry seasons. So you want to have your offspring at a time of plenty, not when resources are poor. Because what are your odds of survival of the offspring if they have it when the resources are poor? It goes way, way down. So isolating the times in which you'll accept mating is really important. And these cues are really important, otherwise you get beat up. It's dangerous to mate when the time is not appropriate. It's actually funny, a long time ago when I first was an undergraduate way back here, dinosaurs ruled, and I remember I was talking to a professor, and he was like teaching intro or something like that. And they used to have a simian unit on this campus way back when. So they used to house primates for research. And there was a unit where you could walk by it and see the monkeys and stuff like that. There was chimpanzees and things. And he told me this story once where he said he would walk by, and most of the year the chimpanzees wouldn't blink at him. They wouldn't look at him. They're nothing. They just completely ignore him. And then other times of the year he'd walk by and they'd go crazy. They'd be throwing poop at him and screaming and yelling at him. And he never knew what the hell was going on. So finally he went and he talked to the keeper. And he said, you know, what's up with the chimpanzees? You know, 3/4 of the year they don't even think I'm there, and then all of a sudden they go crazy, start throwing stuff at me and everything. And the guy's all, well, are you doing anything to them? Are you smiling at them? And did you ever smile at a chimpanzee? No. So for a human being to smile, what are you doing? You're showing your teeth. Why? Human beings smile and they show their teeth. Why?
It shows health.
It shows health. That's exactly right. Why do you think it is that Americans spend more money on teeth than any other country in the entire world? Right? Cosmetic surgery, all that kind of stuff, all the teeth whitening industry, millions and millions and millions of dollars because it shows health. So it's a display. It's also a display of friendliness to curl the lips up. But if you show teeth in a chimp society, what is it? That is an aggressive sign. That is a direct challenge. And you've given the chimpanzee two things it can do: run away or fight. And since a chimpanzee is 4 times your typical strength, what do? They look at you and go, easy, and they fight. And chimpanzees don't fight friendly. They go right to the meat of the matter. So they go right for the neck, the eyes, and the groin. That's where they attack. Not pleasant, right? So, he didn't smile at them. That wasn't his thing. It was something else. Have you ever seen professors? They're still around campus today. Professors are kind of, as a group, typically have low social skill, let's put it that way. Some of them, they're maybe quite gifted intellectually, but they drop something along the way to get there, which is how to deal with their real world socially. And sometimes you see these professors who have like 5 outfits for every day of the week. You ever encounter one of them? So it's like, I wear the same clothes on Monday. It's like they have their closet all organized, so that's as far as they can get. He was one of these guys. And so the guy asked, well, what do you wear? And on what day? He's all, well, on Monday I wear this, and on Tuesday on Wednesday he wore something in particular. Do you have any idea what it was?
Red.
It was a bright red button-down shirt. Okay? And most of the year the chimps didn't care at all. But on certain times of the year they did. What time of year was it? It was mating season, and he was wearing a bright red shirt. So what was he saying to all the chimps?
He's ready.
He was basically saying, I'm ready for mating. And when he did not respond to their calls, what happened? They got pissed. That's exactly right. You can actually see this if you go to like lots of simian units in zoos and things like that. Often they'll have these signs that says, at certain times of the year, they'll put them out, which is like, if you are wearing bright red clothing, please do not enter the exhibit, and things like that. You can actually test it out as an experiment. You could walk in with like a bright red jumpsuit, like strut around and see what happens. You'd be amazed, right? But if you do that, I'll disown you. I never said that. I have no idea what you're talking about. No, it's not one of my students. I don't know them. So where's Marlo? Now, I want you to tell me something interesting here. Why do you think humans then have estrus all year long? What would be your guess?
We don't suffer from resource limitation.
What is it?
We don't suffer from resource limitation.
Most human beings no longer suffer from resource limitation. You're absolutely right, because we do what?
Farm.
We farm. So we've domesticated our crops and we've domesticated our animal products, and therefore they're at access to it at all times of the year. That's one hypothesis. There's another really interesting sociobiological hypothesis yet to be actually proven, but it's an really interesting one. And they get it from actually looking at chimpanzee societies. So chimpanzee societies, what do you think male chimps do when female chimps are not in estrus? How do they treat the female chimps? They ignore them. That's exactly right. They mostly ignore them. They just hang out in their male groupings for the most part. I don't know, smell. They smoke, chimpanzee cigarettes, whatever they do. I don't know. Okay? Yeah, I have no idea. But they ignore the females. Now, is that a good thing for the female chimps? No, it's not. Why not? It decreases their overall protection and it decreases their resource acquisition. So it can be problematic. So the idea is, for a human society, you don't want that. So if a female human is reproductively ready all the time, what does that mean for her male counterpart? They can't do what? They can't leave them and they can't ignore them. Because if they ignore them, what will happen? They'll be replaced very quickly by somebody else. Right? That's the idea. So it's like you're being kept in place by that by that situation. Yes?
Were early humans, did they have estrus all year long, or did they have estrus cycles?
We don't know. Because we can't figure it out from the fossil record. There's not enough information to know. It's a great question. I can't answer it. We don't have enough information. All we have are bones. Or what's the rudiments of bones, never once bones. So it's an interesting hypothesis yet to be proven, but it's interesting, right? So it's looking at the discrepancy between chimpanzee societies and our own. Are chimpanzees primitive organisms? Hell no. They have really amazingly complex social structures. They're incredibly smart. Chimpanzees can get to the same level of intellect as a 4-year-old child. You ever seen how smart some 4-year-old kids are? Damn, that is pretty smart, okay? So never underestimate the chimpanzee and its society. It's really intricate. They have all kinds of really amazing things that they operate as a group and as a social unit. They are not stupid at all. They are quite smart. So are most of the primate groupings. Let's talk about ethological isolation. So this is isolation based on behavior. So lots of times, especially for the animals, population has to have a precursor, and that's some kind of signal formation in order to have the female reproductively ready to accept the male. And there's lots of different courtship behaviors that come into play. Very common in mammals, birds, reptiles, across the groupings. So here's an interesting one. You probably saw this when you were a kid in your backyard. You ever seen this lizard before? So that one that's flipped upside down showing the blue belly and the blue throat patch. So that's a western fence lizard. Sometimes as a kid you call them blue belly lizards or something like that, right? But they're super common. They're found in all kinds of rural areas in Southern California. And when it's mating season, they do this really interesting push-up. You ever seen them do the push-ups in the backyard? Okay, and so what they're doing when they do that is they're showing the underside to prospective females out there. And so the brighter and bluer it is, what are they saying? It's saying I'm what? I'm fit. That's exactly right. If I can put all that energy and waste it on the color, I'm fit, just like the peacock is fit, right? What's cool about them, though, as a behavior is this is a language, and it's a language that's based on frequency. So each particular species and subspecies has a different pattern in terms of the push-up. So it's kind of like Morse code. It's like short, short, long, short, short, long. Other ones will be long, short, and they kind of do those push-ups at different frequencies. So if I'm a short, short, long, and I get a long, long, long response, will there be a mating?
No.
It's not recognized as an appropriate signal, and mating won't occur. So the signal has to be reciprocated by the female of the same species. So that's one example. We talked a little bit about the ostrich. Have we talked about ostrich at all? So ostrich have really intricate mating dances, and so what the male does is he's got this whole dance plan laid out of these different moves that he does for the female. And if he does them right, that will stimulate the female to mate. But if he blows a step, then she'll wander off. She won't mate with him. So it's kind of neat the way they do it, because he'll start the mating dance, and if she's interested in it, she will replicate the steps. And they kind of do this weird kind of back and forth thing. And you can actually, it's a very innate response. I had a friend who was a behavioral ecologist at UCLA, and he was there interested in bird behavior like this. And they studied this, and he actually learned the dance. Now you can learn all the steps, just like learning the cha-cha or something like that. It's the same damn thing. And what was really cool about it is, since it's hardwired into the birds, to get the female birds reproductively ready, you can mimic the dance, and they'll follow it, as long as you do it right. So he actually learned how to do the dance step, and he showed if you went and did it, he would do it, and then what would happen is they'll get the female ostrich ready to lay an egg. And he's laid out a big hunking egg, and they can make like an omelet for the department out of it. It's pretty cool, right? Okay, and then over here, unfortunately the color's not so great, but this is called the blue-footed booby. And so it's a different kind of bird. Why is it called the booby? Any idea? This is an amazing flyer, but that means it's going to be a what? A terrible walker. Remember, adaptations are often compromises, right? So it has this, it's got a completely locked sacrum. And so it walks as this weird kind of stilt walk like this, where it puts the feet out to the side, And it's a terrible walker. And so they got the name the booby because often it'll fall over and things like that, right, as it's walking around. It's such a poor walker. But it utilizes the feet and a whole series of dance steps to actually get the female reproductively ready. So the one over on the side is the male, and the one looking judgingly is the female. And what's she looking at? She's looking at his feet, which is really neat. Now what she's picking up is, number one, the color of his feet. So just like the lizard, the brighter and bluer they are, what is it saying? That I'm more fit. So first she's examining the color of his feet, but she's also examining the worth of his step. So he does this cool dance where he basically puts the head back and he chortles, he goes, does this weird kind of sound. But then what he does is he shows her his feet in a particular pattern where he lifts them up, like this, which is kind of cool, and shows them to the female bird, like, check them out. They're nice and blue, they're very large, you like my feet. But the thing about it is, if he doesn't do it right, she will deny him mating. So he has to do the step just right, get the chortle just right, have to be the right color. It's really interesting. Now here's the thing, there are red-footed boobies who do exactly the same dance pretty much. They look identical, the only difference is what? The color of their feet. But a blue-footed booby will reject that instantly and will not mate with that bird, even though physically they could with no problem. So it's a very strong isolating mechanism between the different groups. This one here is the bird of paradise. So the bright blue one again is the male. The other, the nondescript one, in terms of being brown, is the female. Typically the females are the nondescript ones. Why? Why do you think it is that, why isn't there just flip it, and the brown one be and the male one be nondescript? You see this all the time in animal kingdom. It's not a matter of impressing, it's a matter of survivability. What do you think is important here?
They have the babies.
Females carry the young, right? And so for a bird, it's the internal development of the eggs. So this is really problematic because here's the thing, and this is the way to think about it. The males are dispensable. They're disposable. Right? So one male can inseminate many females, but it doesn't work the other way around. So you can kill off a lot of males and it's not that big of a deal, but if you kill off one female, you have a direct problem in terms of your reproductive output for each population. So that's why the females are typically nondescript and much better defended against than the males, because you can lose a whole bunch of males and it still won't have a big effect because one male can then inseminate multiple females. Does that make sense? All right. This is a bird of paradise. If you want to see some really cool things, go on YouTube and take a look at bird of paradise and listen to it. Because I've heard them in person before. They don't even sound, it doesn't sound like a natural sound. You ever hear like electronic music before? It sounds like that. It's terrible to listen to. It's terrible stuff. I hate to tell you, it's bad. But if you listen, that's what the bird sounds like. It sounds like almost metallic and this weird kind of whirling and chirping and stuff. If you were to hear it, you'd be like, that is not an animal. It's some kind of machine making the sound. But they have to produce the proper sound, and then they have to flare the feathers, do an intricate dance. The color has to be appropriate again. All of these things are limiting. If you blow the dance in any way, reproduction doesn't occur. Another species trying to get close to it or replicate it, it won't work. And that's going to isolate. So for instance, if I had a daughter group from a parental group, any slight deviation from the dance or the color of the plant, is that going to result in a successful fertilization? It won't. There won't be any population. Reciprocity is a really big feature within these animals. Signal recognition and then signal transmission is really important. We've often talked about, have I ever talked about human reciprocity in here yet? In terms of signal formation? No? I'll give you a quick one. That's interesting. So often I said we cover up our biology with a lot of cultural stuff, right? This is a really classic example of one. And it's signal reciprocity between males and females, and it can also be between male and male or female to female. It's exactly the same type of thing if it's sexually based. And so it occurs at different levels of stimulation. And it follows a very set pattern in human beings. It's also seen in primates in a similar way. And so let's just put yourself, next time you go out to a bar, or if you're not old enough to go to a bar, next time you go to a party or something like that, I want you not to participate, but just sit back with whatever the drink of the day is, and just relax and watch. And it's the best comedy you'll ever see. Okay? Just sit back and observe as a biologist, as a behavioral ecologist, and watch what goes on. And you'll start to see this signal formation. And you'll quickly realize that the vast majority of people really suck at it. And you can watch it fail in a myriad of different ways, all very funny. And so the first signal that human beings, when they're attracted to each other, what is the first signal? How's it delivered?
Good look.
It's a visual signal. That's exactly right. It's eye-to-eye contact. And it must be delivered appropriately. And usually it's the first one that has sound. So here's the thing, and a signal says a lot of different things, the way you would approach it. So like this, what does this say? What does that say to you? Nope, that's exactly what it says. Another very enthusiastic person. Right? So that means no, I'm not interested, right? But what if it's something like this? What does that say?
Too much.
That is very good. That's on the very, very good side of the scale. And what would be the response, hopefully? No. Hopefully it should be no, right? Hopefully it should be no. But the proper signal is something that's kind of like this. It said, I'm interested, but I'm not creepy. That's just enough length to say I'm interested, but not enough to be creepy. And so that's the first signal. Now, if it's received, that look will come back, and that look will go back. And so it's back and forth, and at that point, what's the next signal? Not a physical, no.
The approach.
Gotta slow your roll there. What is it?
Approach.
Speech. That's it. So you come close, and then you will speak to each other. So you learn a lot immediately when someone opens their mouth. First thing you're going to see is what? Because you're both going to typically smile and show teeth. And if someone opens their mouth and it's full of holes and stuff's falling out, usually that means no. Okay? Hopefully it should be no. But what also happens is you have an exchange of vocalizations and you learn a ton of stuff immediately. What do you learn? The name's not important. What are you learning from the sound?
What they sound
I don't mean it like that. What's the sound tell you?
Where they're from. It's a nice voice.
It's telling you all kinds of stuff. What's it telling you? Where you're from, educational background, all those things. It can tell you if you're from a different country, different parts of the world. It can tell you from the south, the east, the north, whatever it might be. All kinds of stuff. Lots of people play with that to fool other people. Think what actors do all the time, right? Modifying speech patterns to convey different kinds of information. If something out of someone's mouth is just like, "Durr," is that going to be a yes or a no? I don't know. Maybe no, yes, I have no idea. It depends on who you are. But usually it's a no. If that works, now what happens? Now it's a physical touch, okay? Now here's where, this is usually if you see people who get it right along that road, this is where it usually always goes wrong. It's a physical touch point. Interestingly enough, human beings will accept touch on two places on their body without being too threatened by it. Do you know where they're at? The hands is actually a huge no-no. If you touch someone on the hands that you do not know, the instant response is to do what? To pull your hand back. The hand is an intimate item. It is not something to be shared. That's why a hand must be extended from the person to another person, whether they will engage in it or not. What else?
Shoulder.
It is on the back, right here. Now where else?
The back of the neck or shoulder?
Not the back of the neck, no.
Oh, is this like mid-back. Sorry, mid-back.
Where else?
Mid-back. Oh, I thought this thing was
It's right here, and where else? Right here. That's it. Nowhere else. Anywhere else will result in failure immediately. Someone comes up, puts their hand on your thigh or your butt, puts your hand on your ear or your face. Ever have someone come up and touch your face? They show no. That's not good. I don't like that. Right? Those are the two spots. And it also is completely based on duration. So it's like if we were walking to campus and I just walked up to you and I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I gave you a tap on the back. Most of you guys would think nothing of that. And I wouldn't think anything of it, right? But if I came up and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" It's not so great, Professor Ian. I'm not doing very good. That connection is really important, right? So if that works out and that touch is reciprocated, then what does it typically lead to? That can lead to sex. And it can be, it depends on the individual. It could be weeks, months, it could be that night, days, whatever. But it has to go through that cycle. Interestingly enough, that is the basic pattern of all bonding within human beings, not just sexual. And there are books that have been written about it that have made millions of dollars to actually learn how to speed that process up for a variety of different ends. If you want to go to an interview, you can utilize this basic philosophy. Right? It's not even philosophy. It's a basic set of environmental, behavioral cues. So when you go to a job, you only have a very limited amount of time to make a connection with your person who's interviewing you. Now, most of the time, the job qualifications in terms of what you bring to the table are quite the same. But you have to be able to distinguish yourself from another individual in that basic pool. So what you can do is, human beings are mimicking the behavior. It's a subtle dance. And you can modify that and manipulate it to your advantage if you're good at it. So the instance is, when you're at a table and you're talking to someone, if you lean forward, what will that person across from you typically do?
Lean forward.
They'll lean forward. If you lean back, they will lean back. And you model behaviors. Next time you're out, look at people doing it. And there's a subtle dance that happens. Cross the arms, people cross the arms. It's a really intricate dance that goes back and forth. So you can utilize this in a situation by speeding the process up and by manipulating it. And so for interviews, you can do this. A friend of mine, a behavioral ecologist, the bird guy, taught me this stuff, right? And I told him, I'm going for an interview. Well, you need to do this. And I was like, well, tell me about it. And I actually utilized it here. Luckily, never tell any of the people in my department that I did this. Right? But I remember when I came for my interviews, I did that. And it was like, well, when they lean in, you lean in. When they do this, you do this. And I was like, okay, yeah. Now here's the thing, it works very well. And like you walk out the door and then what are they thinking? I love that guy. I don't know why, but I do. And so it's an edge of something, right? And so that's how you do it. But here's the trick about that. If you get caught, now what happens? I hate that guy there because no one likes to be manipulated, right? And so if someone realizes you're trying to manipulate their behavior, they will instantly shut it down and you're out of luck. So if you're going to play a game like that, you better be shrewd about it, right? But human behavior is like that. It's just like all the same things as here, just we cover it up with lots of fluff.